Why do I find it easier to be kind to strangers than I do myself? If a friend was having trouble, struggling, you'd sit and listen. Don't beat yourself up, you're only human. But then, we make the exact same mistake and suddenly we're talking to ourselves completely differently. We know truth. We know it all. We know how we feel about ourselves. We know the whole story. Because there's another reason why we're harder on ourselves. We often judge ourselves by intention, yet we judge others by the outcome. You miss a deadline, you're useless. Your friend misses a deadline, they're probably overwhelmed. But there's definitely a difference between accountability and self-punishment. One of these creates growth, the other one creates shame. Would I say this to someone I love? That we're trying to create a better relationship with ourselves, a better relationship with our inner critic, a better understanding of ourselves. We're trying to write a better story from this moment onwards. Because you don't have to tell yourself you're amazing, because you don't need to love everything about yourself. Start treating yourself like someone that's worth it. Because maybe the relationship you have with yourself is the most important relationship that you will ever have. So, August 23rd was a Sunday, and I finally announced on Instagram and other platforms about my book. Why do I do this? A guide to building a stronger relationship with yourself. I cannot tell you the level of anxiety that I had. Can't tell you how sick it was making me. This brings up so many fears of rejection. It taps into childhood wounds that will always be there. Many people use the word healed, but I think really what happens is you expose yourself to these challenging emotions, and over time it becomes more manageable. It's a bit like managing grief. You never get over the loss of somebody, you practice living with it. And I think that's the case for most of our emotions and the reactions, responses, the situations we have. And I was very, very, very much rejected as a child in so many different ways, which again I speak about in the book. And the book itself has been an exercise in how you remember your life and the way it impacts you. Something I want to say about the book is I use stories in the book from my past to explain things that have happened and how I've come to these weird and wonderful ideas. But essentially, the book is a book of ideas. It's a book of concepts. It's a book of things that I've observed over time through working with clients, through doing my own work. And at first, all the ideas seemed like the mad rantings of a madman. But to make it helpful, to make it something that people can use, I put it into the MADE model. So the book is predominantly about that. But it's just, I'm not sure outside of my kids and my marriage, I've ever been so proud of anything that I've created. It really is going to help people. So I'm over the moon that it's announced. I've popped that anxiety bubble and we're on our way. So if anyone's interested in finding out more, then we have got a wait list so that you can be told about when the pre-order codes come through and just any information at all. So that'll be in the show notes if you are interested and you want to sign up. You won't be inundated with loads of emails. Don't worry about that. It will tell you what you need to know when you need to know it, and we won't bother you otherwise. So today, I'm going to be answering another listener question. I'm going to be answering Lucy's question, who is 33 from Birmingham. And she asks, why do I find it easier to be kind to strangers than I do myself? Lucy, I think this is a really interesting question because I think most of us would describe ourselves as kind people. If you were in a supermarket and you saw a stranger drop their shopping, you'd probably stop and help them pick it up. That wouldn't necessarily be a choice. It would just be what you naturally did. If a friend was having trouble, struggling, and they needed you, you'd sit and listen. And if somebody we loved made a mistake, we'd probably tell them something like, don't beat yourself up, you're only human. But then, we make the exact same mistake, and suddenly we're talking to ourselves completely differently. Saying stuff like, how can you be so stupid? Oh, you always do this. You should know better. And then finally, why can't you just get your act together? As if you'd ever say that to somebody you cared about. I don't think this question is really about why you can't be kind to yourself. I think this is more about why do you believe other people deserve compassion more than you do? So as always, I'm going to explore some points around this topic. I want to say thank you for bringing this question forward because, again, what I love about answering the listener questions is that it's real and that these are real life situations. These are ways that people are really feeling and we can explore this together. And some of the stuff they say will be helpful and there'll be other stuff that maybe you're not ready to hear yet or doesn't apply. First thing I want to say is that we often judge ourselves by intention, yet we judge others by the outcome. Now, I find this really fascinating because when somebody else makes a mistake, we naturally think about their circumstances. We think along the lines of maybe they were tired, maybe they were under pressure, or maybe they've just got a lot going on. But yet when we make a mistake, it changes. And we often ignore the circumstances completely. And we start judging ourselves by the outcome. You miss a deadline, you're useless. Your friend misses a deadline, they're probably overwhelmed. But essentially it's the same behavior. We just have different interpretations of what it means and how we analyze it. And I just think that that is worth noticing. We judge ourselves by intention, but we judge others by the outcome. Another thing I think is important is that I think it's not helpful that we have this inner critic that we hate, that we're trying to get rid of, that we're trying to ignore. Think of it like a toddler. Think about if you've ever been around a toddler. Maybe you've got a toddler, had a toddler, maybe a family member's got a toddler, a friend, whichever. But if that toddler wants your attention and you don't want to listen or you're doing something else, you don't just say to the toddler, hang on a second, just wait, I'll be with you in a minute. And the toddler goes, oh, okay, yeah. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen at all. No, the toddler will escalate. The toddler will do whatever it can to get your attention, not really caring whether what they do is good or bad, as long as they get your attention. That's the goal. That's the outcome that they're looking for. But I want you to think of it like this, or what if you thought about it like this? Your inner critic is trying to help you. I say this because I think it's an important distinction. That critical voice isn't necessarily trying to destroy you like it feels like. Sometimes it's trying to protect you from making the same mistake again. It's probably thinking something like, if I can make you feel bad enough about this, then you just won't do it again. And to some degree, there's some logic to that, albeit it feels horrendous when it happens. But how it feels is not what I want to place a focus on. What I want to place the focus on is the intention of your inner critic. It's trying to help you. There's not this part of you that's trying to sabotage you all the time. I really don't believe that. I think that the result might feel like that sometimes, but I don't think that's what an inner critic's doing. It's trying to protect you, but maybe it's looking at it through the lens of fear instead of opportunity. But then sometimes I think we can confuse self-criticism with self-development. We think being hard on ourselves will keep us accountable, but there's definitely a difference between accountability and self-punishment. Accountability will always ask, what can I learn from this? Whereas self-punishment, and here's the difference, will always ask you, what's wrong with me? One of these creates growth, the other one creates shame. Our inner critic is trying to help us. And in a way, there's a world where we try and help our inner critic. We want to open up a dialogue with it, want to listen to it. We want to know that it's us that has the real answers here, and that our inner critic is an extension of us. Sometimes it voices our fears. Sometimes it voices our doubts. Sometimes it legitimately voices our limitations. And this is why we should never ignore it. It's a part of us. It's just dialogue. It's just communication. It's just information. It's not a demand. It's not an order. It's not a restriction. It's just the way that we feel. And we're human, so we can feel two conflicting things at once. And that's why that conversation has to be had. Now, I'm not saying you sit in your car or you sit in your office having this external dialogue with your inner critic. I'm just saying it's not trying to sabotage you. I don't see the value in believing that there's a part of yourself that is trying to sabotage you or trying to stop you from achieving or making you happy. Another thing I think is important is somewhere along the line, you may have learned that your worth has to be earned, because there are some people that grow up and they learn consciously, unconsciously, whichever, things like, I'm valuable when I'm successful. Now, you instantly might jump with the word success to being an adult, but that could be anything from scoring a goal, getting a high grade on a test, anything at school or as a young child, whichever. But other things can be, I'm lovable when I'm useful. I'm good when I behave. People approve of me when I achieve. And the result of this can be kindness towards yourself can actually start to feel really uncomfortable. And as you know, human beings, we gravitate away from what makes us feel uncomfortable and towards what makes us feel comfortable. And it doesn't really matter about logic. It doesn't matter if the thing that makes us feel comfortable is good for us or not. It's just how it makes us feel. Because if you spend years believing that you need to earn your worth, unconditional self-compassion, can feel almost undeserved. And you end up keep thinking, I'll be kinder to myself when I've sorted myself out. How vague is that? But the truth is, that's backwards. You don't need to become worthy before you can start treating yourself like someone who's worthy. It's not conditional. You don't need to earn it. You are worth it. And if you want to start seeing yourself that way, then at the very least, even if you can't believe it right now, you can start practicing the behaviors of somebody that thinks that they are. Just practice. And here's the thing about practice. This is why I love practice. Because what you practice, you generally become much better at. Another thing I think is important is we know the whole story about ourselves. We absolutely we are the one person in this world that has spent every single second with ourselves. We know the truth. We know it all. We know how we feel about ourselves. We know the entire story. Not the versions that we've sold to people, not the versions that we want to believe, not the versions that sound better or are easier. The real truth about ourselves. We know the whole story. Because there's another reason why we're harder on ourselves. We have access to information that nobody else does about us. You know every single mistake, every insecurity, every regret, every time you lost your temper, every promise that you broke, every stupid thing you've ever said. So when someone else looks at you, they see you. When you look at yourself, you see your entire back catalogue. And when you compare what you know about yourself to what you believe about somebody else, it's never going to be fair. And you're always going to come to some warped conclusion, especially if you start battling with your inner critic too, because you are judging yourself with information that nobody else has. And that's why you need to be so careful about the story that you create, because you're not necessarily seeing yourself objectively. You are almost absolutely looking at yourself through the judgments of other people. And you're taking the things that you've done in the past, the mistakes that you made, every human has done, including myself, and you're making them who you are. You're letting them define you. And you're even letting them, in some cases, predict your future. You're seeing yourself through years of accumulated experiences, mistakes, and beliefs. Another thing I think is helpful, I hope is helpful, is this idea that self-compassion is in some way letting yourself off the hook. Literally, I see this all of the time. It's a real problem. It's a real thing to at least acknowledge, because one of the biggest misconceptions is people hear, be kinder to yourself, and they think someone's just supposed to accept everything that I do. Well, no, you can hold yourself accountable without attacking yourself. Holding yourself accountable doesn't mean beating yourself up, punishing yourself, attacking yourself. It doesn't mean that. It just means that you're taking accountability for your behavior, good and bad. Imagine a child makes a mistake. You wouldn't then look at the child and say, you're a terrible person. No, you wouldn't. You'd address the behavior, not the person. You'd say, that wasn't okay. You'd look at it as a teaching moment. Let's talk about what happened and what you can do differently next time. Do we do that with ourselves? Absolutely not. Complete character assassination without any hesitation. You see, by using the example of the child, letting the child know that the behavior wasn't okay and that we're to look at what happened and see how we can do it differently. What you're doing is accountability with compassion. That's it. And I just don't know why or what stops you, is probably a better way of framing it, from doing that to yourself. Because you deserve the same approach as if you were talking to that little child. Another thing is, speak to yourself like you're someone you're responsible for. Now, hear me out. Here's a really simple exercise. Next time you catch yourself being incredibly critical to yourself, just stop for a moment and ask, if someone I loved came to me with this exact problem, what would I say to them? And when you come to the answer of what you would say to that person, write it down. Write it in your phone, write it in your diary, write it wherever you want. Just write it down. And then I want you to do this. Read it back to yourself, because often the advice we give to other people is the exact advice that we need. It's also important to notice your language. This is something that I practice. It's not something that comes natural to me. I have to practice it. And you probably hear it in the podcast. Sometimes I'll say something and then I'll pause and I'll correct myself. I do that in real life too. I'm also often checking that what I'm saying is true and that's how I really feel, because sometimes you get caught up in conversation and it can feel like a little bit like a kid running downhill and they lose control of their legs and they're no longer in control of the speed. I get that way sometimes when I'm having conversations, and sometimes I'm speaking and I'm like, wait, I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I'm just saying words. So I'm always conscious of that. And again, I'll use compassion with myself, or at least I'll try. But really what I'm getting at is I want to encourage you to listen to the words that you use for yourself, because there's a huge difference between I made a mistake and I'm an idiot. I mean, that's obvious, but yet we do it because one of those things describes the behavior and the other, once again, attacks our identity. Instead of I'm lazy, maybe try I've been struggling to take action today. Again, one describes the behavior, the other one is attacking our identity. Instead of I'm terrible at relationships, why not try I've repeated some patterns in my relationships that I need to understand. And why does language matter? We hear it all the time. And for a long time, I was like, eye roll, cringe, yeah, here we go, the words that you use for yourself, blah, blah, blah. But here's why language matters. The way that you describe yourself becomes part of the story you believe about yourself. Because this is the thing, that internal story that we're building, this book that we're writing in our head about ourselves that has many chapters and experiences and beliefs about ourselves. You're writing that. So the words that you're using out loud, the things that you recall, you remember, that becomes who you are. It becomes your story. And this whole thing is about understanding the difference between you and your behavior. People say they want to change. What they often mean is they want to change their behavior. And you put aside how you feel about it. Sometimes you practice changing your behavior and it doesn't feel comfortable. It feels uncomfortable. It feels wrong sometimes because you haven't practiced it very often. But we have to get ourselves around this idea that we are broken, that we are flawed, because we're not. We're just practicing behaviors that maybe in the past were helpful but no longer are. They're the only ones we've learned. That we have some emotional responses and sometimes we don't feel fully in control of our behavior, whichever. But we have to look at it with compassion, because compassion says you're okay. We just need to look at this behavior. Whereas not being compassionate is you're a failure, you're this, you're bad, you're wrong, you're not a good person. Now, I don't know if that's a very solid foundation to make positive or helpful changes from. So, as always, we're going to look at some practicalities. We're going to look at some things we're going to do. So this week, if you're struggling with this challenge, and as this is your question, Lucy, I'm going to direct this at you. We're going to play Catch the Critic. That's what we're going to do this week. And for 1 week, what I want you to do is not try to eliminate your inner critic. We're not going to do that. We're just going to try and catch it. Every time you catch yourself saying something to yourself that you wouldn't say to someone you care about or just to another human being in general, I want you to pause. And then I want you to ask yourself this: would I say this to someone I love? Now, I can feel all the tugs from different directions of why you shouldn't say that. Shouldn't. There's that word again. But all I'm going to ask you to do is catch the critic and then ask it that question. Would I say this to someone I love? Because if the answer is no, change the sentence. Not into something fake or overly positive, but into something fair. And that's the key. We're not trying to create unrealistic affirmations. We're not trying to look in the mirror and lie to ourselves, because all you then do is convince yourself you're a liar, and that's not helpful. No, we're trying to be fair. We're trying to create a better relationship with ourselves, a better relationship with our inner critic, a better understanding of ourselves. We're trying to write a better story from this moment onwards, because you don't have to tell yourself you're amazing. Especially if you don't believe it. You're simply recognizing that you're struggling with this, but struggling does not make you a failure. That is believable compassion. Because really and ultimately, I think the deeper lesson here is, Lucy, I don't think you become more deserving of kindness because you become more successful, more productive, or more emotionally healthy. You're already a human. You don't have to prove that, because being human means you're going to get things wrong. You're going to disappoint people. You're going to make bad decisions. You're going to have days where you're just not at your best. And that's not evidence that you're broken. That's just the deal for being human. Because maybe the relationship you have with yourself is the most important relationship that you will ever have. Because you spend every single day with yourself. You hear your own thoughts. You experience your own disappointments. You carry your own memories. And if the person you spend the most time with is also the one that criticizes you the most, then man, that's exhausting. So maybe the goal isn't to become someone that doesn't make mistakes. Maybe it's to become somebody that meets himself with compassion when you do. So, to offer a final reflection, what would change in my life if I stopped treating my mistakes as evidence that something is wrong with me and started treating them as opportunities to understand myself just that little bit better? Because you don't need to love everything about yourself to start treating yourself like someone that's worth it. So Lucy, I hope that was really helpful today. Please do let me know when you see this episode. And if there's anyone else that wants me to answer any questions here on the podcast, then fire me an email. The email will be in the show notes, and perhaps you'll be on a future episode and we can explore your problem just like we did Lucy's. Once again, just a reminder that the How Do I Do This book is coming out in January 14th. And if you want to know when the pre-order's out or just to be kept up to date on information about it, then sign up to the waitlist. And that's exactly what will happen. And again, not going to inundate you with loads of information, just going to tell you what you need to know when you need to know it. Thank you for listening today, and I'll see you on another episode.